now we should be good on YouTube as well. What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys for tuning in. I got a couple big announcements first, and then I want to talk. So, first things first, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you guys are enjoying your Thanksgiving. I think this year has definitely been a really awesome year for me. I mean, it's first year being a dad. It's definitely been an exciting one. Very cool to get a nice big snowstorm in Colorado right before Thanksgiving. It was pretty cool to have the kids be off yesterday and just kind of extend their Thanksgiving break. But I actually think it's kind of funny because I remember when I was younger, we had a big snowstorm on a Friday. I want to say it was the 98th snowstorm in October. And it snowed on a Friday, which really upset me because we lost 2 snow days because we were still off Monday and Tuesday of the following week. But had that snow happened on a Monday, we would have had like a 6-day break, which we had a 4-day break, which was still pretty cool. But those 2 days where I would have been off anyway, that was just kind of funny. So once again, now that we got a few more people on, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you guys are able to spend time with your families. I hope none of you are in LA. I saw the traffic picture of LA yesterday and it just looked atrocious. So that's definitely something that I'm very excited not to have to deal with. Let's see. So got a couple very cool pieces of info for you guys to talk about first. So as we get into this whole live stream, what I really want to get into is more of the state of the game stuff. I had a really cool opportunity yesterday to talk to Jonathan Edwards, he runs laxgoalietips.com, and he was an Olympian. I actually don't know exactly what he did, but so he invited me on his podcast yesterday, and it was really cool to go just kind of talk to him and see where his head is as far as kind of where the state of the game is. And it was very cool to be a guest on a podcast / live stream. But so one very cool thing that came out of that was that now all of these live streams will now also be put into podcast form, so that if you want to, if you don't want to watch on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, you can get it in a podcast. So I'm waiting for approval from Apple to make sure that the podcast actually goes through, but that is the goal. So this will also now be a podcast. So you can listen to my beautiful voice without having to see me. So that's probably a beneficial thing. Total face for radio idea. So another cool thing. So one of the things I've been thinking about a lot as I've been following the directive of Gary Vee and Jordan Peterson and all these people is that there's a level where at first you kind of just have to follow what you want to do, and then at specific points it just like blows up. And so there's so many new opportunities now coming for the POWLAX coaching content and other things that everything is just getting extremely exciting. So I don't want to kind of say a couple of the big things that are happening before they happen, but there's definitely some very, very cool stuff in the works for all of the POWLAX content. Oh, another thing for anyone who is actually a patron on Patreon. So if you want to support what I do and the free videos that everybody can watch, you can basically become a patron for $5 a month, and you get access to over like 350 pages of information that corresponds to the videos that I have. And so as that has grown, I think it's time to kind of like change through some of those things. So the tiers are going to change, and here's how they're going to change. So first off, the $1 and $3 tiers are probably going to go away. And I think that's mainly because if the $1, $3, and $5 tier are the only thing that people see, there's no incentive. I mean, there's not really a very big incentive to donate more than $5 anyway, because you get everything for $5 anyway. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be offering a $25 tier where we will connect and like kind of you'll give me a background on where your team is at so I can make sure that you get the correct content from me that you're following so that it is more beneficial. So you're not just searching through random stuff, because that's the hardest thing with lacrosse coaching in general, is figuring out where a team is and what the most beneficial thing for those people is going to be. That's the really tough part, because Jonathan and I were talking about yesterday, was that there are some teams in Colorado who are just extremely good, and they're like 9 years old. And they're doing the same type of stuff that our JV team is doing. And it's pretty tough to make sure you're doing the right things from a coaching perspective if you don't have all of that background. So as I go and I coach a specific group of kids, say it's the clinics that I have on Saturdays right now, it took me, I had a whole thing designed for the first day, and I basically had to trash it. And because it was too advanced, it was too far into the high school stuff for the rec clinics that I'm doing. And so there were elements I could take, but I think that by offering a tier where, say, every month, me and any coach who wants to have this will talk about the team and kind of figure out what the next steps are as far as developing an entire team, I think that'd be very beneficial. So another kind of interesting thing that Jonathan and I spoke about was how so many coaches now focus on gimmicks, like two-person plays rather than full team play. And it's definitely a tough thing to do, because the most important thing with team play is building players who understand how to move off ball. And that gap is just so big, because as players, even younger players who just begin with the sport when they're like 6, their whole mentality is about themselves and the ball, right? And if they have the ball, they know what to do. If they don't have the ball, they don't know what to do. And so to take someone who is coaching, who's like a volunteer parent coach, and have them understand how to transition a player from only thinking when they have the ball to thinking without the ball, and how to present themselves in a good enough area where they can pop to get open or they can cut through, is something that's very tough, that I think for coaches who would like that extra bit of attention, I think that's a pretty cool thing to do. I think there will also be another tier, but I'm not quite sure what that is going to be yet. But so good news is, and this is the thing that is kind of tough for me, is that, as I speak to a lot of coaches around just around the United States, I had a guy hit me up from New Zealand, which was really cool. But so as I talk to all these coaches, one thing that I hear all the time is, you got to charge more. And I think that I could. I think that if I put everything behind a paywall right now for $15 a month, I think that a ton of people would do it. But that's not what the sport needs at this point in time. And I don't think I'll ever do that, because the ability to have everybody watch and comment for free is just, it's too valuable, right? So going to tournaments and having coaches know me and come talk to me about the content. It's funny, because as that happens, anytime a coach sees me and recognizes me and comes up to talk about the content, I want to interrogate them. And so it's interesting, because you'd think that someone who from YouTube or from TV or from wherever, that you've seen all of their content and you follow them, you'd think that you'd want to interrogate them. But I want to interrogate the coaches who see all the stuff, because I want to know what they liked, what they didn't like, and all of those things, because it just, refining and understanding my craft is more valuable to me than just saying, oh, what's going on, man? Oh, you use the content? Oh, cool. I want to know which things that they're using and which has worked, what hasn't, so I know how to explain it better the next time. Okay. So let's move into let's see if I have any more announcements, actually. So, yeah, happy Thanksgiving. New podcast if you want to watch on a podcast. And it was very cool to be on Jonathan Edwards' podcast as well. Those were my announcements. There is another huge announcement coming, but it's not completed yet. So we'll have to get to that later. So now, the topic of this live stream and the title is building the ladder. And I say building the ladder because our objective as coaches, refs, players is to create an environment where young players of any age or any ability level can essentially feel safe enough to step up on the first rung of the ladder. So one of the things that I've been talking about with, I think I spoke about it a while ago with Sean Maloney, who's the kind of Western director of U.S. Lacrosse. We touched on it yesterday with Coach Edwards and I, is the idea of creating environments for any player to come and feel welcome. So another kind of, I'm going to go off on a TikTok tangent right now for all of you youngsters who are seeing all my stuff on TikTok, which I think is very cool. So I had it didn't really go viral, but it got a lot of attention. So I had a TikTok post that hit like 130,000 views, which for me is outrageous, right? There's nothing that ever hits that many views. And what it was me telling a kid who's a football player who doesn't have that much lacrosse skill that I don't care if he doesn't catch the ball. I care that he cuts as if he would catch the ball, that he believes that he can do it because eventually he will. And that's the whole intention, the whole idea is to create an environment where they feel safe enough to step up on the next rung of the ladder, and then they can continually build up from there. But the difficult part is that the brightest stars shine brightest. So not only are the players who aren't good not getting the attention that they should, but they can feel like they don't belong because they don't get any attention. And that's where I feel that a lot of teams, especially young coaches, and so this is me 100%. I actually had a very good conversation with, I don't even know his name, but he runs Two Wolves Performance yesterday on Instagram, which was very cool. But young coaches who want to come up, they want to make a name for themselves, they want to be the best. And so much of what we do as coaches, especially at the high school level and the youth level, is facilitate an environment for kids to just grow as individuals, not necessarily as lacrosse players. And I feel that so much of that is missed because of the stars drawing out all of the attention. And I don't think that's because there isn't a lot of work. So I'm going to call somebody out who I think is one of the best coaches and just all around people that I've ever had the chance of meeting and interacting with. And he happens to be the head coach at my high school alma mater, which is Jerry McCullough. Jerry, he would probably be pissed that I'm talking about him, so hopefully he'll see this and like say something to me and be like, dude, I can't believe you brought me up. But Jerry coaches at Smoky Hill, and if you know the area around Smoky Hill High School, Regis is right there, Grandview's right there, CT's right there, and so a bunch of these new high schools have been taking a lot of the players who've been playing quite a bit, and the work that he does there isn't like Smoky's not going to win a state title in this year. Neither is CT, neither is Grandview, but in the same sense, that's not the point of high school sports. Like, I get that you want to have the goal of winning a state championship. Everyone should have that goal because you want to do as best you can. But that's not the real reason why you coach. You coach so that you can hopefully help to direct their lives in a way where they become better people. And in order to do that, you have to do two things. First, you have to create an environment where players are going to be able to try new things, and somewhere where just because they screwed up doesn't mean they're going to get yelled at, and that they're able to expand on their own abilities, because the second thing you have to do is just encourage them to get better and just encourage them to go try things for themselves. So it's funny, a kid on TikTok actually called me out the other day because I posted something that was essentially something that Gary Vee also talks about, and this is something that's funny from a youth perspective, is the whole idea, well, let me rephrase that. I guess, the whole idea of ideas in and of themselves is not because it's someone specific's idea, if that makes sense. So if you think of all of the greatest people in history, let's go with Lincoln because of all the cancel culture stuff right now, right? Lincoln, who helped so much in freeing slaves and all of that and making everybody equal, like, it's not like those are just his ideas. Like, he had a ton to do with it, but it's not like those are what he owns. So if someone else has an idea that you really like, you should take that idea. And so our job as coaches is to facilitate the advancement of the kids so that they hopefully take the ideas that we have and utilize them in a good, correct way. So the trouble with lacrosse, getting back to the building a ladder idea, is that for a lot of people and a lot of kids, the focus becomes about reaching the top versus enjoying how you're climbing, right? So I'm going to go through the whole ladder analogy at a first time because I have a very good understanding of the base of the ladder right now. So everybody knows, talked about him all the time. He's napping now. So my son, when he was 7 months old, I encouraged him to go up the stairs. That freaked out his mother, which it definitely should. But there's a level of me wanting him to climb up the stairs and see what he can do. Now, he can't go down the stairs yet, so you always have to watch him. Anytime he fell, if I was right behind him, I would catch him. And, I mean, I would always be right behind him. I'm not like letting him fall down the stairs. But I would catch him, but I would still make him tumble down the stairs so he could feel what it felt like to fall, so he would be cautious of the stairs. It wasn't like I was just going to catch him, put him back, and not let him kind of understand. And it wasn't like I was throwing him down the stairs. It was like I would, let him kind of like roll down the stairs as if he would, but at a very much slower pace. So at the beginning of anyone's journey in experiencing something new, you want them to feel safe enough to go do it, but right on that edge where they're not quite sure that they're going to be able to do it. And that's our job as coaches, as parents, as, I would say refs or admins. But the ability to create those environments within a lacrosse landscape that is very disorganized can be extremely difficult. So if we take the Colorado lacrosse landscape, which I believe is quite similar to a lot of other landscapes, we have a ton of different teams in the Denver metro area. And so we've got Hawks, Warriors, DLC, Jets, Boulder Valley, Cougars, which is now Raptors, and basically Stampede, a bunch of these different teams. And so before the season, they have placements where you go try out. They're essentially tryouts, and the idea is to put players on a team where they're at a similar level so that as they're experiencing the game through practices and games, they're right on that level where they're getting better, but they don't have it mastered, but they're doing their best to get better. And that's a very, very difficult task because a ton of different people within the community will try to rig and game it. So I think I've mentioned this in the past, but the Hawks won 6 championships. And let me just do a little more organization. So in an organization that has, I want to say 270 players in it from 2nd grade to 8th grade, that's going to be 6 age groups. Those 6 age groups will each have 3 to 5 teams. And the ability of the administrators and coaches to assign players to teams that will then match other teams in other divisions is extremely difficult because you don't know how good the kids are in Boulder if you're in Parker. So just because you have, an upper level red team, a mid-level red team, a upper white team, a mid-level white team, a lower white team, an upper blue team, and a lower blue team doesn't mean that the middle white teams in Boulder and in Parker are going to be similar enough to where their games are going to be competitive and we're going to be getting that growth factor. There always seems to be teams who, like my team last year, had good competition in our silver division, but it wasn't something like the team that we played in the championship game was by far our best game. And then I think we lost another game to another team, but we didn't have all of our guys. But so for the most part, people do a really good job of trying to assign teams, but there has to be enough leeway where if a team gets blown out in the very first 2 or 3 games of the season, there's an ability to change so I'm going to rattle off in kind of what I'm going to call a waterfall fashion, some of the issues. So the first and most important issue that I see from a coaching perspective of youth lacrosse is a misunderstanding. So Jonathan Edwards and I talked about this yesterday, and he said that basically anytime someone is yelling, it's either a cry for help or it's yelled with love. So parents and coaches are all like this. So a parent that yells from the sideline, take your, like, shoot it, right? That's a cry for help. They want to be in control. They're not in control. They want to make that happen. Now, the parent that yells, great job, that's from love. And so from a coach's perspective, you have something very similar. And the similar thing is that coaches who don't understand why what they're saying to a 9-year-old isn't working is going to get frustrated because, and this is the other thing that I think is the most hilarious thing that coaches ever say. If a coach ever says, I have to tell you this 1,000 times. Like, yeah, that's why you're a coach. What are you talking about? Of course that's what it is. Like, do you think these high school kids are going to listen once and understand something? There's no way. I mean, you're talking about eight-year-olds too? No way. That's why play is the best thing to do, because even though we want to create a system where players are moving up and advancing as they go, stepping up from, rung to rung to rung up the ladder, as they learn best from actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, not from sitting in isolated groups. But so, let's see. As far as where we as coaches and facilitators are trying to do well, there are so many little niche things that have to be developed in order for us to really move the sport forward. And there are a lot of people who are doing really great work to try to do it. Like all of the coaches who, here's one thing that can bug me. We have a massive, open space, open jobs, if you want to call it that, for youth coaches. But if you're going to be the person who takes that job, you have to at least put your best foot forward and try to learn extra stuff. And so Coach Edwards would call this their bandwidth. A lot of people don't have a lot of bandwidth, but they're just there and they're available. Like, I've known a lot of youth coaches who have unbelievable jobs that they have to be pulled to here and there, and they deserve the utmost respect for trying to do it. And for a lot of the parents who yell and scream and don't think the coach is doing a good enough job, they at least put their effort in. They at least are trying to do the best that they can. And I think that as long as those coaches can be understood, or basically are given the benefit of the doubt, that's awesome. Now, there are some coaches who, because what they're trying to put out isn't being used by the kids, or the kids don't quite get it yet, they get angry, they get mad, and they do things that they shouldn't to the kids, like yell and scream at them. I'm 100% for getting that coach out of there, because that yelling and screaming is going to ruin the sport for kids who want to play the game. So you look at U.S. Lacrosse, you look at the way we are trying to make the game go, there's already a barrier for entry for lacrosse. I mean, it's expensive. If you're going to actually, this is why I think 3x leagues should be a thing everywhere, or speed lacrosse leagues should be a thing everywhere. Because if you can play just by having a stick and a goal, and everyone can be goalie, and everyone can play defense, and everyone can play offense where you don't have any pads, you're going to open up the barrier, you're going to open it up to so many more kids who never had a chance. Now, you think about soccer, the reason soccer is the most popular sport in the world isn't necessarily because it's the best game, but it's the game that you can play anywhere. So the Sean Maloney, the guy from U.S. Lacrosse, he recommended to me a movie called Bounce. And it's basically the story of how the ball helped us learn to play. And in it, you see these very underprivileged kids from Africa basically taking twine and a bunch of plastic bags and putting them together and creating a ball that they can kick around and play with. So the barrier for entry for soccer or even basketball is extremely low. The idea that there's some cabal in lacrosse where we're trying to keep underprivileged kids out is total BS. If there are individuals who are trying to keep underprivileged kids out, they deserve to be called out and they should be gotten rid of. But I don't think that's really happening. I think that there really is just a barrier to entry. So by creating and facilitating small groups who can just go play and enjoy the sport, play 3x and speed lacrosse, that will help expand. But so there's also this tie to the 10-on-10 version of the sport. Like everyone's whining about the 6v6. Good. Go play. I feel like the people who whine about 6v6 have either never played box or they've never played 3x or they've never played speed lacrosse. Like the technique and the fun of the game of mastering a ball in your stick, that's the fun of it. It's not about the fact that it's 10-on-10. Like if you look at the rule changes from long ago to now, it's unbelievable. Even from the World Games to college to, all of these have all these different rules. But the one true variable in lacrosse is the sport itself, the connection between the stick and, the players. And if you go back to the Native American heritage of it, and this is something that I really liked a lot, was something I just read said that all of these new sticks that are metal and plastic are dead. And that the true, I think it was because, what's his name? The Virginia coach. So his father passed and he got a D-pole from his father. And so there was a big thing on it on the championship weekend. But there's so much connection to the medicine game style of the sport that to constrict the sport to just 10-on-10 and whine if it's ever something different means that you don't have a good understanding of what makes the sport beneficial in the first place. Like I was telling Coach Edwards yesterday, I learned failure from lacrosse, from doing tricks. And I tell so many players this as I coach different groups of kids, that the thing that taught me failure was my ability to try a trick and invent a new trick and fail and fail and fail and fail. And then I'd get it and then I'd run upstairs and I would totally ruin my dad's show because there was no DVR back then. And so I would literally stand in front of the TV and be like, look what I got. Look what I can do now. And I would show him the trick. But those 100 times of failing were what really allowed me to learn. Thank you, Amos. So Lars Tiffany is the name of the Virginia coach who received the stick from his father who passed, who they did that whole thing on. But so back to the whole build the ladder idea. So if you think about the players who go to Division I lacrosse, they're very minimal, right? So there's 1 million kids playing lacrosse in the United States, and I think only enough spots on the team. Let's say, how many D1 teams are there? Like 87 now. So 87 times 40, let's just round it up to 90. That's 3,600 players out of 1 million at least. And there are so many college teams under that Division I level that players can play at. Like, so I had a player at Grandview, and he was never the best player. I don't think he started a single game unless it was a game against a team that we were going to blow out all the way. But he is now playing in college, and he was the best kid ever. Smarter than, like, one of the smartest kids I've ever met. Always had a great attitude. And now he's playing collegiately, even though he was not the best player, because that's what he wanted to do. And I also know players who were really, really good who then went to go play in college and then now don't play in college. So, okay, back to the whole ladder idea. Our ability to facilitate the game in a way where kids feel welcome and are able to progress through and kind of climb up within their skills is the best part. Now, the problem with that is that this hypothetical ladder is not something that moves in a straight direction. It's something where each individual team has to be evaluated based on where they are, and then what needs to be implemented is something that will allow each player to develop. And that's what's so incredibly hard, because if you have a group of players who somewhat vary, and so I call them drill killers because that's what they are, a lot of players are not necessarily the best players. And so they drop balls in all of these drills, so you can't run what you want to run, which is what makes me think that Coach Danowski's Western presentation, he had a little clip that he said, if you master your fundamentals, then you can do a lot of other fun stuff. And that's been exactly what has happened with the Scorpions team that I've been coaching, because all those kids know how to throw, they know how to catch, they can do it at speed, they can do it in all these different variations. But for a team, a fifth grade team who's a white team where they can't throw and catch very well, understanding what to do to help those players get better is way tougher than it sounds, because there's so much nuance to the sport. And that right there is why playing the game is the most important thing, whether it's 3x or anything else. So all of these coaches setting up 5th grade teams to run a specific play are missing the point. You're missing the mark. And so for a lot of those teams, a lot of what's going to happen is you're going to have the 2 or 3 kids who can do things well, and they're going to be involved in every single play, and everything's going to be designed for them because the coach wants to win the game. And if the coach really wanted things to be to facilitate his entire team, he would make things way more just play-based in practice, where they're not focusing on just 2 or 3 players who can score the goals. It's the same idea as, it's just a play. It's plays versus playing idea. If every kid on the team learns how to play and has the ability to pick up a ground ball and move it, and then the other players develop the ability to catch the ball, that team is going to be way better than a team that understands plays. It's the same thing with you have to make a pass rule. That rule was created because coaches would give it to one player and have him run through everybody. But a good coach on the other team would say, when he has the ball, everyone is able to go play him. And that's the other thing with the, the contact. I think that, 6-7-year-olds can handle contact in lacrosse as long as they're taught how to do it right. It's just like girls lacrosse. You just got to push. You're not going to have takeout checks, things like that, but it does make sense. So, I want to talk about this from the parents' perspective right after I give acknowledgement to the coaches, refs, and admins. So from an administrative perspective, for a youth league, you are way more valuable than you think for a completely thankless job, because anyone who has even the slightest negative experience is going to bounce and go to another location, another place to play. And what's funny is I know so many kids who have bounced from team to team to team to team to team because the experience wasn't the best that they could have had, they leave. It's extremely difficult to categorize 270 or so players into specific teams that make sense, where those players can then go play another group of teams who have never seen this original group of teams and have things go swimmingly. So as well competitive as some of these teams are for the AYL, the CYLA, and all the leagues that have this happen, people are doing a pretty darn good job as things progress. Now, from a coach's perspective, if you're a volunteer coach, as long as you are dedicated to improving what you do, you're cool with me. But in order to take the job in the spring to coach the players, totally just lost my YouTube thing. So basically, now I can go here. I disagree. But so basically, I'm trying to think. Sorry, my YouTube live stream just folded, it looks like. Oh, no, it didn't. Sorry, my inbox just said that it wasn't there. Okay, sorry, that was a total off-topic thing. Okay, back into the story. So, with coaches, if you are going to coach a team, a youth team, you have to build up every single player by having them play the game. None of this, okay, you can have specific kids do specific things, but not at the detriment to everybody else. Like, if your team only allows the best players to touch the ball every practice or even every game, like, you're not doing your job. You have to allow those kids that aren't very good to fail. And you can't get pissed at them. Like, the kid from the post that I had on TikTok that got a lot of views. That kid is a strong kid. He's got no skill. Like, he's pretty good. He actually did really well on our end. And I know he's going to go work at it, but his ability to try it as best he can because he feels comfortable that I'm not going to scream at him is way more important than whether or not he drops the ball or not. Like, now in the spring in the competitive season, which none of youth lacrosse should really be unless it's, 12U and higher, that is, I was just on it, and that just, sometimes, it just goes away. My mind just totally goes away. So really quickly, that was the whole idea. Basically, you have to facilitate an environment for everybody. That's the whole idea. So now, parents. My advice, so first off for parents, if you're new to the sport, I've got one thing that you have to do. Buy a String King stick for your kid, or buy a Warrior Warp for your kid, or have your stick strung by someone who doesn't use whip at a store. Do not buy the STX sticks that bag out and then have tons of whip. Don't buy the Under Armour sticks that do the same thing. Don't buy the sticks that don't have a pocket at all. And your investment of that additional $30, let's say you buy a $30 stick off of the shelf. So I think the Warrior Warp minis are, I want to say like $40. I know they're not too expensive. They might be $100. I don't know. Even if it is $100, if you can just spend that little additional money to get the beneficial thing, to get the better stick, your kid will love the sport way more than if he just has a crappy stick. Because if he has a crappy stick, he's not going to be able to catch and throw. And then he's going to be that kid on the team who everyone knows can't catch. And even though coaches should facilitate an environment where that kid can be a good part of the team, it doesn't mean that's actually going to happen. But they're going to enjoy the sport more if they have a good stick. Next thing, let your kids fail. Let them fail. Nothing bad's going to happen if they didn't actually win something. So regardless of whether or not your kid wins or loses a match or anything like that, the first thing that you should ask them as they get in the car, regardless of how they look and feel, is, how are you feeling? What'd you think? Let them interpret the situation. The thing that a lot of parents do, and I can see it in their kids, is the parents decide before the kid even has a chance to recollect what actually happened for them. So as they're walking to the car, oh, your coach is such a dick. Oh, I hate that guy. You should have been playing in that third quarter. We were about to win. I've had parents come up to me on teams that weren't very good and say, if we're going to win, if we have a chance to win a game here because we haven't had a good chance to win in any other games, you better keep those good players in. And I'm like, you think I'm going to compromise the whole entire idea behind my team, behind what I've been doing, behind building up a love for the sport, because we have a chance to win one game in one tournament? Are you crazy? There's no way I would compromise my beliefs like that. Not one. There's no way. And that's the thing where we have enough people who think everything is based on winning that I don't even really need to address those people. Now, in competitive tournaments where it's not youth and it's something where there is actual accolades that can be taken, yes, absolutely. High school varsity level, yes, that's a huge one. High school C team, I can see doing it a bit and being competitive because they have to be competitive in order to progress to that varsity level. I can see that being something where you'd want to play the best players. Youth, which this was 6th graders, no, I'm sorry. There's no way that I'm going to compromise my ability to allow each player to play in each position and try and fail at what they do simply because we may or may not win or lose. Because your players' ability to process the loss and deal with with losing a game is far more important than compromising my beliefs so that you can feel justified in participating in our team simply because of one win. Right? I get that kids who win feel better, but if winning becomes the only thing that matters to parents, and it's the thing that if a kid doesn't win, their parent isn't happy, it's going to create so much crap down the line that's unbelievable. Now, that is not to say you can't be hard on your players. And that's not to say that you shouldn't allow coaches to be hard on your players. The problem comes in when you can go both ways. First off, should we get a trophy for that team that didn't win a game? Absolutely not. No trophy. No trophy for second place. Only a trophy for first place. And you put it there, and it's the North Star. You try to get to that spot. Now, are you a bad person if you never won a trophy? Absolutely not. But your consistency and ability to strive is the benefit, is the goal. So one of the things that, like, the journey is the benefit. So I remember I got trophies, participation trophies, when I was playing soccer when I was like 6, 7, and 8. And it was kind of cool to get a trophy. We had them all up on this, it was above our big TV in my dad's house. We had all my brother's trophies, all my trophies, all the other trophies. And kids don't need a trophy. The benefit is playing the game, is being a part of what that is. That's the whole point. It's not like you have to go super easy or make sure they have that. Like, you know what's a really good one is like ice cream after the game. That's a great reward. I love watching you play and getting some ice cream. I think that's the best thing parents can do, is to first allow the player. So I'm going to try and get this in one whole fell swoop. Tips for parents so that their kids continue to play sports. Number 1, allow the kid to process the game through his own understanding, which means try not to give subtle hints on the walk to the car. And once they get in the car, ask them questions like, how'd you think that went? Like, what'd you think? And then allow them to expand out on what they felt. Thing number 2, if you're going to reward them with things that are based on enjoying them playing, not things like, oh, you won the game. Oh, you won, so let's go get pizza. Don't do that. Hey, you really worked your butt off, and that was amazing. You did so well. Like, you've been practicing in the front lawn all day, and it really showed, and it was so much fun to watch you because of how much work you put in. That's brilliant. That's golden, because that means that the praise is associated with work, which will then get them more accolades in the future, if that makes sense. So the entire idea is make sure that the positive reinforcement is associated with the act of getting better, not with attaining a goal and winning. Because winning is a myth, especially at the youth sports level, except for one team. One team wins. That's it. Because if you take the red level worst team last year and we play and they play a team that's in a lower division than them, that team that won the whole thing in the lower division doesn't win. But that's where creating the environment where they have a chance to win in each one of those divisions makes sense. But if the lines were drawn a tiny bit different, every team that won wouldn't have won. And every team that got beat every single game would have won championships. And that's what happened with my team. My team the previous year, the Hawks team I had this last year, was in the upper red level the year before, and they got smashed. And then they went down a division this year, and we won in overtime in the championship game. So that was where they should go. And if we were going to do another year, they would then move up, and then they'd have to play against those really good red teams again. So just don't associate positive reinforcement with the good things, and allow kids to, process things for themselves without giving too much of an idea as far as what you think. And I can't imagine how hard it is. I'm excited to have to try it out for myself. But that's just what I see from the coaching perspective and from a kid's perspective. The kids who have parents who are very opinionated and always let them know what they think of the coach and all of those things, those are the kids that clutch their sticks a little bit too tightly. And those are the kids who you kind of worry about, because every time the ball is thrown to them, you can hear their dad up in the stands. Oh, go do it. Oh, go do it. Oh, it's crazy. Okay. So, in conclusion, these are usually the best parts because I've talked through my ideas enough to where I can actually get a full articulated idea out. So, in conclusion, as administrators, parents, coaches, refs, our ability to create an environment where you are essentially helping a 1-year-old child climb the stairs, where you're right behind them, you're encouraging them to go up, and at some point you're able to let them go so they can climb by themselves, is the idea. Now, that has a ton of different really tough parts because there are so many siloed environments where specific teams are producing teams for specific levels that don't necessarily relate to other levels, and some coaches try to take advantage of it so that their team is just a little bit, that their team will be on the top of whatever division it is. Next little point on the creating the environment is coaches have to create environments for everyone, not for just the best 2 kids. It doesn't make sense to play a sport if your kid has to stand on the left side of the goal and doesn't ever do anything because the play is to pass to X and then cut in circles on the top. It doesn't make sense to play. You have to develop all the players. The key to all of this is the fact that the game in and of itself is the answer. So if your players are not playing the game for a substantial amount of practice, I'm talking at least at the high school level, at least 30%, at the youth level, at least 50%. The game in some sense, whether it's 3v3, 3v2, 4v3s, whatever that is, they need to be playing a game. If they're not doing it at least that much, you're not doing your job. You've got to facilitate it because the ability to play is what makes everybody enjoy it and everything even. I think I got that idea out pretty decently. So a couple announcements just for anybody who's still on here who missed the initial announcements. A couple very cool things. First off, I was on a podcast with Jonathan Edwards yesterday. That was very awesome. Jonathan Edwards runs lacrossegoalietips.com, and I was very excited to go on the podcast. It was a very cool experience. At some point, I would definitely like to have guests on this live stream. Because of that podcast and some advice from him, this live stream will now be a podcast. I'm waiting for approval through Apple, but it will just be called the POWLAX podcast. So if podcasts work better for you, and you want to listen to me ramble, I appreciate it, and that'll be in podcast form. Thank you thanks everybody for watching, and I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy your families. Try not to drive each other too crazy. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Another big announcement coming soon, but I can't jinx it. So you guys all have a good one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought. Talk to you guys in the next one.